It's up!
All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk, Uygur, and Kasparian with you guys. Big news, unfortunately, out of Gaza. We'll get to that in a minute. And then Donald Trump up to his usual insane antics. We'll get to that as well. Big show ahead. Anna, take it away.
Well, we begin with the devastating war between Israel and Palestine. It is an absolute disaster in Gaza, and it's worth talking a little bit about that. So let's get to that story. Israeli officials have made clear that absolutely no humanitarian aid will enter the Gaza Strip unless the Hamas militants who kidnapped Israelis release those hostages. In a statement, Israel Katz, the Israeli energy minister, said the following: "Not a single electricity switch will be flipped on, not a single faucet will be turned on, and not a single fuel truck will enter until the Israeli hostages are returned home." And what that means is that the fate of millions of Palestinians lies in the hands of these terrorists, these Hamas militants, who are so savage and so brutal that they had no problem murdering over 1,000 civilians over the weekend, including literal babies. And I'm terrified for the Palestinian civilians who are now suffering as a result. This is a serious humanitarian crisis. They have nowhere to go, nowhere to flee. Their neighborhoods are being leveled. Airstrikes are constant. Israel is employing this tactic of leveling entire neighborhoods rather than just individual buildings. And Palestinians say they're unable to escape and have nowhere to go, and that entire families have been crushed under the rubble as a result of those airstrikes. On Wednesday, Gaza's only power station ran out of fuel and shut down, leaving only lights powered by scattered private generators. International aid groups warned of a worsening humanitarian crisis after Israel halted deliveries of food, water, fuel, and electricity to Gaza's 2.3 million people and prevented entry of supplies from Egypt. The war has claimed at least 2,700 lives on both sides. In fact, in Gaza alone, 1,500 people have been reported dead, with about 500 of them being children. I have more details for you, including the disastrous fate of the hospitals in Gaza in just a moment. Cenk, I'd like you to jump in.
Yeah, so look, my take on it is that it lies in two different sets of hands. So yes, Hamas can turn over the hostages and then presumably solve at least the electricity problem that Israel's threatening. But of course, just as a matter of fact, it is also in Israeli hands. And the Israeli government is the one making the decision to cut off the electricity. Now you could say they're justified. That's a question up for debate. I don't think it's justified, and I'll tell you why. If I have a family member that was kidnapped by Hamas and is in one of those tunnels, I would be both incredibly scared and enraged, and I would not want to have a conversation about Palestinians and innocent lives and this and that. I would want them to cut off the electricity. So I'm being honest with you, okay? But governments shouldn't run like enraged family members, because then you're going to make a lot of vicious decisions that affect tons of innocent lives. So we've condemned Hamas's brutal acts inside Israel very forcefully throughout here on this show, including the killing of children and babies. So now 500 Palestinian children are dead. How much bloodletting is enough? So if you're saying vengeance justifies the killing of these Palestinians, including their children, okay, I guess you could debate that. But I would come out on the side of don't do that. Why did we all get enraged at Hamas? Why were we so angry at them? Because their actions led to these, and directly, they killed these innocent civilians. So if Israel says yeah, we're going to cut off electricity knowing that it's going to kill all these people. We're leveling these blocks. We're giving some warnings, and some folks are saying, well, you cut off all the power, nobody's hearing the warnings. Again, you could debate the facts around that, but Israel's making a decision. Yes, we are going to punish not just Hamas, and they are going to, every Hamas member that crossed over into Israel is the most fair game you've ever seen in your life. Those are at best case scenario, if you don't want to call them terrorists or you want to call them soldiers, it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, if soldiers invade your area or terrorists invade your area, you get to kill them all, okay? So that is not in dispute at all. They're targeting some Hamas leaders. Of course, they're going to target Hamas leaders, perfectly reasonable and within normal actions within a war. The question is, where do you draw the line? So Hamas lost any kind of, Hamas never had any moral high ground, but on behalf of Palestinians, they lost the moral high ground, and it was despicable the way they did it. So now apparently Netanyahu's government says, oh yeah, I'm gonna lose the moral high ground just as much as you, or more than you, or less than you. You could debate what the relative actions are, and Hamas started it, no one debates that. Killing all those people isn't gonna help. Here, I'm gonna give you a quote that to me struck me the most. So this is from Associated Press News, but they're quoting the Red Cross here, as you'll see. Without electricity, hospitals risk turning into morgues, said Fabrizio Carboni, regional director of the International Committee of the Red Cross. Newborn incubators, kidney dialysis machines, x-rays, and more are all dependent on power, he said. No, the government cannot do that. You can't do that. And so they're gonna do it. And you say, oh, well, then Hamas should give over the case. Yes, but Hamas, you all say are terrorists, right? And what they did was terrorism when they killed those civilians, no question, right? So we're gonna leave the decision in the hands of terrorists, or are we going to be better than them? And I would ask Israel to be better than them. And you can say, oh, I can't believe you're even having this discussion. No, I am having this discussion. I am having it because do not counter with equal or more viciousness. Maybe you think morally speaking, you have a right to, but I'm asking you not to, because when you kill their children, this isn't going to solve the situation at all.
Yeah, I agree on that 100%. I have no problem with them targeting Hamas. I do believe that Hamas is a terrorist organization. I do believe that what they committed over the weekend in terms of their torture and murder and maiming of Israeli citizens and innocent civilians in Israel was absolutely disgusting, and they should suffer the consequences of that. But we're talking about a population of people in Gaza, half of whom are under the age of 18. These are not individuals who asked for this. These are not individuals who carried out terrorist attacks themselves. These are innocent civilians who are trying to live their lives in an untenable situation. And I want to go to the video showing scenes of what Gazans are dealing with right now as we speak. It is just absolutely tragic. It's difficult to watch, so I want to give that warning. But here is what it is like to be a Palestinian stuck in the Gaza Strip.
The Gaza City neighborhood, once known as El Rimel, the Sands, reduced to ashes. Its residents retrieve what they can, which isn't much. Israel continues to pound the strip, targeting, it says, Hamas infrastructure. Residents in shock are asking why. I got married this year, says Yahya Lahwel. What did I do? What have we done? You destroyed an entire neighborhood. He says he never fired a rocket. In this, one of the most densely populated patches of land on Earth, bombs crashing into crowded neighborhoods rarely differentiate between fighter and civilian. The death toll rises by the hour. While Gaza's hospitals are overwhelmed with the wounded, around 40% of the population of Gaza is under the age of 15, according to the CIA. The information ministry in Gaza reports that nearly 170 buildings have been destroyed and more than 12,000 residences damaged.
And I think that Hamas's unwillingness to release the hostages not only shows their brutality toward Israeli civilians, but also their brutality toward Palestinians, knowing full well that this is going to continue happening and people will continue to be killed, brutalized as a result of their actions, but they don't care.
So this is among the reasons why I said that Hamas was monstrous idiots. They have no plan, they have no end game, they have no strategy. It was just rage and murder and mayhem. And I said days ago that, and what's it gonna happen? You killed Israeli civilians in a grotesque way, and now they're gonna kill tons and tons and tons of Palestinians. So did you think that that wasn't going to happen? So what was your plan now? So Israel says they took out a bunch of the leadership, including one elite force for Hamas, if such a thing exists, and maybe a naval commander. Like, I suppose you expected, but didn't you not expect that they would level Gaza? Of course they're gonna level Gaza. So now you could say, hey, Cenk, it's not, of course they shouldn't. I just told you they shouldn't, right? But they're going to, and every rational person knew they were going to. So, look, guys, it's super easy to blame Hamas, and we just did it 10,000 times over. And yes, they started this, and all that responsibility is on them. But that doesn't mean that Israel doesn't have any responsibility. And you just saw that rubble there. Yes, they didn't start it, but just saying, okay, you started it, so now we're gonna kill however many more of you. That's not what a government should do. I know a lot of governments do it. Our government did a lot of that on 9/11, and we killed the wrong people in Iraq, let alone the right people, let alone civilians instead of soldiers. I understand that, but we spoke out against that. We speak out against Hamas, and now we're in a situation where we're gonna have to speak out against this brutality. And by the way, let's just acknowledge things that are super obvious. Look at why can Israel do this to Gaza with no repercussions, no brakes in the car, no nothing. Because of the occupation. The idea that Israel handed over Gaza Strip is absurd. I'm sorry, but I can't stomach that. It's not a thing that actually happened. People have to stop saying it. They don't control their borders at all. Then Netanyahu comes in and says, well, if you don't like it, you should leave. Great, yes, they would like to leave. 15% have packed up their bags and they're going stuffed into UN facilities within Gaza. But they can't leave. They don't control their own borders. They can't go into Israel. They can't go into Egypt. There is no leaving. And then, okay, well then how are they just cutting off the electricity? Well, so the Palestinians don't control their own electricity. They don't control their own fuel, their medicine, etc. You know why? Because they're occupied. There is an occupying force that controls them completely. Please don't deny reality. That's the reality, and that's why you're seeing total unlimited damage in Gaza. You saw it with your own eyes.
But let me ask you a question, Cenk, because prior to what Hamas did over the weekend, I would have agreed with you 1,000%. However, you have to understand the perspective of Israelis when Hamas has control of the Gaza Strip, knowing full well how brutal and savage they are and how willing they are to kill literal children, literal civilians who did nothing wrong. And people try to argue, no, they're not civilians. Some of these people are settlers, and so they're part of the problem. Anyone making that argument is so incredibly ignorant and hateful. Don't even bring that BS to me, okay? But when you see the kind of threat that Hamas poses to the civilian population in Israel, you can understand that perspective of fear.
Oh, of course I understand the fear.
So like, what is the solution? Because I understand where they're coming from, but I also don't want Palestinians to be brutalized like this.
Yeah, I know what the solution is. Ben and I talked about it on the first day here. And so look, you can say it's not easy, but I actually think it is easy. And I know that sounds outrageous, but I'll tell you why in a second. Okay, so first though, I have to distinguish a couple of things. So everyone is human. I wish no one would ever get killed in a situation like this, including the soldiers. A lot of the soldiers for the Israelis are young kids, pulled out of their house, get drafted, you gotta go, okay? A lot of the people dying in Gaza Strip are kids. And by the way, if they're 17, 18, they're part of the fighting, well, hey, you attacked Israel, you had it coming, but they're still 17, 18. settlers, I think I think what the settlers are doing inside the Gaza Strip and the West Bank is disgusting. So
my understanding is they pulled settlers out of the Gaza Strip forcibly, okay?
Yeah, good.
And that there are settlers, yes, that is a huge problem when it comes to the West Bank. That is a problem with the West Bank.
Yeah.
But the settler argument in the context of the Gaza conflict makes absolutely no sense.
Okay, so look, what I was getting to is, it doesn't mean you get to kill settlers. They're still human beings, okay? Now, not that being said, also a different fact is, today there's a story about how the settlers, they killed 3 Palestinians. And then when the Palestinian families went to the funerals, the settlers pulled over the funeral procession and killed the people going to the funerals. So there's no end to this. There's no end to the hatred. And so is Hamas vicious? Of course. Look, again, everybody get upset if you want, but fundamentalism drives this. Normal people that grew up in a normal secular culture don't go around killing babies. You have to brainwash them into not regular religion, fundamentalist religion, and tell them that God wants you to murder babies. That's the only way that it happens. So yes, Hamas is out of control in that it is led by fundamentalists. The settlers, totally out of control, led by fundamentalists. And if you're getting like, oh no, but the settlers are just stealing land and murdering Palestinians, it's not that big a deal. You're wrong, it's a giant deal. It's a cancer that's causing this problem in the first place. So, okay, now we've apportioned gigantic blame to everyone who deserves the blame. So how the hell do we solve it? Oh, one last piece of blame. Stop saying, I will not accept this argument under any circumstances. The Palestinians had it coming. There is no Palestinians. Not every Palestinian, a 3-year-old didn't sign up to be part of Hamas. Because if you use that logic, just please think about it for 1 second. If you use that logic and go, oh yeah, but they voted for Hamas. Israel voted for Netanyahu. Under that logic, Hamas goes, oh, the Israelis had it coming. The civilians should be murdered for voting for Netanyahu. That is terrible logic. I hate that logic. All that logic leads to, it's not even logic. All that leads to is killing more innocent civilians. All right, so what's the solution? And as I said on Monday, withdraw from the occupied territories, build the largest walls humans have ever built, make the Great Wall in China look like child's play. And then if at that point, Hamas, Fatah, any Palestinian government, you cross over to Israel, then you have attacked a foreign country, and they have every right to attack you back in whichever way that they like. But right now, the Palestinians don't have a country. They're completely and utterly vulnerable, defenseless, imprisoned, with no rights, no control over their own territory. So I would reverse the question. I have an answer, 1967 borders and giant walls. I have an answer. By the way, about a decade ago or longer, they negotiated a compromise that was past the 1967 borders. The Palestinians looked like that they were ready to accept that. And Hamas even indicated behind the scenes that they would withdraw that dumb, stupid thing that they have in their charter about how Israel's not allowed to exist. Really, Hamas, how's that working out for you? Anyways, so whether you think it's the Palestinians or the Israelis' fault for not accepting that peace agreement that was nearly done exists. They could put that into effect today. If I was Israel, I would not be unfair. Now, I'm not talking about the war, in terms of the peace. I would take a peace deal that was slightly in favor of the Palestinians and then just do it unilaterally. By the way, the Palestinians don't want that. They say, oh, no, we need to have negotiations. How's your negotiations working out? Do it unilaterally, but be super fair. Then you sit on the moral high ground forever and ever and ever, okay? But now with the occupation and now what you're doing to Gaza, there goes the moral high ground. You had it, and then at a moment where you're wrecked with grief, if you can rise above that, that is when you become historic, and that is when the world cherishes you. But that is not what's, and I get it. Its human reaction is, you killed mine, I can't wait to kill yours. I understand that, but I was like, wouldn't it be amazing if finally one side rose above it? And right now they're not. And so I will condemn Hamas from here to eternity for what they did. But it makes the occupation no better at all. It's still the core of the problem. You cannot occupy people for 56 years, control their lives 100%, and then go, golly gee, hey, is it a problem? Yes, it's a problem. And if you say, no, you're not allowed to talk about it the day after, okay, I hear you, I said it. Like, hey, what is not time to talk about apartheid, et cetera, the day after. But when do we get to talk about it? Do we have to wait 2 years? This is the same thing that happened at MSNBC with me. I was gonna criticize Obama. They said, don't do it, you have to wait a week. Until it's out of the news cycle. And the occupation continues on mercilessly to the end of time. It's incumbent upon Israel to come up with a plan to end the occupation. If you're the occupying force, it is your moral duty to end the occupation. If you do not, then you lose the moral high ground and you don't get okay, everyone here is bad guys, but go ahead, keep killing each other. See how it turns out for you. I'm disgusted by those poor kids dead in Israel. A baby stroller by a car, they mowed it down. Families killed in the kibbutz. I mean, God knows what they did to women, et cetera. And I'm disgusted by the 500 Palestinian children that are dead now and way more to come. And when a government like Israel says, we will cut off all of your fuel, and if you got kids on incubators and you got grandmothers on life support, they're all gonna die and we don't care. That's not what a decent government is supposed to do.
When we come back from the break, Donald Trump has some criticism for Benjamin Netanyahu, and apparently there is an ongoing feud between both sides. That and more coming up.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk, Anna, and questing for the quest, Stephen, GG, and brother, I'm gonna have trouble with your first name as you would probably with mine, Cuauhtemoc Martinez. Thank you guys, we appreciate all of you guys. You empower us and allow us to do our job. They hit the join button below the video on YouTube. You can do likewise, or tyt.com/join. Anna.
Well, we have some more Israel-related news, although there is an American angle to it because Trump decided to weigh in on Benjamin Netanyahu. So let's get to that.
I'll never forget that Bibi Netanyahu let us down. That was a very terrible thing, I will say that.
Former President Donald Trump expressed disappointment toward the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu during his speech in West Palm Beach, Florida this week. Now, before we get to why he feels this way, I think it's pretty important to understand more of the context of this discussion and how Trump thinks the world is actually a safer place when he is in charge. Let's watch.
We killed the founder of the ISIS movement, al-Baghdadi. Remember al-Baghdadi, the biggest of them all? And then we terminated the world's top terrorist, the Iranian butcher. I was also proud to be the best friend Israel has ever had in the White House by far. And if the election wasn't rigged, there would be nobody even thinking about going into Israel. The election was rigged, very sadly rigged.
So in that clip, he mentioned taking out one of Iran's generals, and what he's referring to was the assassination of Iranian General Qasem Soleimani, who was again assassinated during Trump's administration. Luckily, that did not spark a hot war between the United States and Iran. There was a lot of concern that it would. And so he took a major risk by doing that. And so understand that context as he weighs in on why he believes Benjamin Netanyahu is so disappointing.
I'll never forget that Bibi Netanyahu let us down. That was a very terrible thing, I will say that. And so when I see sometimes the intelligence, you talk about the intelligence or you talk about some of the things that went wrong over the last week, they've got to straighten it out because they're fighting potentially a very big force. They're fighting potentially Iran. And when they have people saying the wrong things, everything they say is being digested by these people because they're vicious and they're smart. And boy, are they vicious, because nobody's ever seen the kind of sight that we've seen. Nobody's ever seen it. but they cannot play games. So we were disappointed by that, very disappointed, but we did the job ourselves, and it was absolute precision, magnificent, beautiful job.
Now, something to also keep in mind as we continue giving you details on this story is that Donald Trump was absolutely furious and beside himself after Benjamin Netanyahu accepted the results of the 2020 presidential election and accepted that President Joe Biden was in fact the victor in that general election. Now, Israeli officials have responded to Trump. They didn't take kindly to what he had to say. To be clear, I'm no fan of Benjamin Netanyahu, who is a far-right extremist and who has carried out all sorts of terrible acts against the Palestinian people and has sparked a judicial crisis in his country, spurring endless protests among the people of Israel over the last year. But my reasons for being against Netanyahu, very different from Donald Trump's reasons. His reasons really have to do more about the fact that he doesn't like that Netanyahu is unwilling to just be his lapdog and declare that he won the 2020 presidential election. So before we get to the Israeli officials and their response to Trump, Cenk, what are your thoughts?
I loathe Donald Trump, and I can't understand. I'm trying to be open-minded to people who don't agree with me, but how do you not loathe the guy? So why is he attacking Netanyahu? There's a million legitimate reasons. The Netanyahu is callous, giant right-winger, corrupt, etc. No, none of those reasons. None of those reasons, right? No, he's saying, well, we killed Soleimani, and then he tried to take my credit. How do you not see how self-obsessed he is? What a little bitch he is. Oh, it's me. Netanyahu tried to take away my credit. Look, as much as I despise Netanyahu, his people were just murdered, massacred. This is not the time to worry about your petty little bitch ass.
That's all he cares about.
That's all he cares about. And then why is the other reason he hates Netanyahu? He wouldn't acknowledge that my election was stolen. Come on, right-wingers, man. I've never seen a weaker man in my life. What a pathetic, pathetic human being. They took my toy away. The government was my toy. Oh, they took it away from me. I'm gonna smash it. And if anybody says anything mean about me, I'm gonna say something 10 times more mean about them. What a little pathetic bitch. Come on, man. MAGA, how do you not see that? How are you worshiping a guy who's the weakest man in America? Everything is, oh, I was offended by Netanyahu. Jesus Christ, man. Try to become a man for the first time in your life. Total loser, pathetic, self-obsessed narcissist. How do you not see it? How do you not see it?
All right.
Jesus Christ, that guy's winning.
All right, let's get to what Israeli officials have said in response. So Shlomo Kari, who is a member of the Knesset in the Likud party and serving as Israel's Minister of Communications, reportedly told Israel's Channel 13 that it is, quote, shameful that a man like that, a former United States president, abets propaganda and disseminates things that wound the spirit of Israel's fighters and its citizens, end quote. And then he said, we don't have to bother with him and the nonsense he spouts, at least for now. And hopefully,
well, you might have to bother with him soon. And he doesn't care that your civilians were massacred. He doesn't care at all. He cares that his fifis were hurt. Oh, wow, your feelings. That seems super important, Donald Trump, you monster.
And this final statement is, in my opinion, the most interesting because when asked if Trump's remarks make it clear that he cannot be relied on, Karhi reportedly replied, according to the Times of Israel, obviously.
That's obvious to everyone on the planet except MAGA. Literally everyone on planet Earth knows that Trump is a giant liar, that he lies about everything. MAGA's like, nope, he's the only one telling the truth. Okay, congrats. You figured it out. You guys were the one set of geniuses that figured it out, that little baby that's crying in the corner 24/7 about how his feelings were hurt and how he lies through his teeth a billion times, has never shown any evidence for anything he has ever said. But yeah, he's the one guy telling the truth. You guys nailed it.
Now, both Governor Ron DeSantis, who of course is running against Donald Trump in the Republican primary, has criticized him, as has current President Joe Biden. In addition to his statements about Netanyahu, Trump went after the defense minister of Israel as well, seemingly referring to Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. Trump said they have a national defense minister or somebody saying, "I hope Hezbollah doesn't attack us from the north." So the following morning they attacked. If you listen to this jerk, you would attack from the north because he said that's our weak spot. Trump remarked that Hezbollah was very smart for following every word put out by American and Israeli officials. Now, obviously, that did not sit well with Israeli officials. And so when Fox News reached out to Donald Trump for a clarification or a comment about that, a Trump campaign spokesperson clarified that President Trump was clearly pointing out how incompetent Biden and his administration were by telegraphing to the terrorists an area that is susceptible to an attack. That is not what he said. And also, show me where the Biden administration pointed to vulnerabilities so Hezbollah can attack.
Biden gave a speech that Israel absolutely loved. 48% of the country watched it live. And even people who were Biden's critics inside Israel said, thank you, thank you, thank you. And now, look, by the way, there could be critique of Biden saying that he did not seem to put any brakes in the Israeli car as they were rolling into Gaza and doing the things that they're doing. But to suggest that Biden was not pro-Israel enough, you'd have to be a lunatic to believe that. But of course they're not, they're just liars. All they do is lie.
Yes, they do lie because in additional reporting, 2 people close to Trump have spoken to the press to say that in phone calls with various pro-Israel GOP allies and donors, who want to know if how Trump would handle the war between Israel and Palestine. 2 sources familiar with the matter told Rolling Stone that Trump actually wants Benjamin Netanyahu impeached, even though their parliamentary system doesn't work the same way as the United States, and impeachment is not possible the way it is here in the United States. Trump has relayed a few ideas he has discussed with policy advisors, including cutting off all aid to Palestinians and encouraging other nations to do the same, as well as capturing and extraditing certain Hamas figures. But during these private conversations, Trump has also spent an inordinate amount of time aggressively trashing Netanyahu. In a recurring comment Trump has yet to publicly state, he has expressed his strong desire for Netanyahu to be gone by the time Trump would potentially be back in the White House in 2025, according to these sources. Since Hamas attacked Israel on Saturday, Trump has said Netanyahu should be impeached by the Israeli parliament because the assault, which was preceded by an apparently catastrophic intelligence failure on the part of Netanyahu's government, occurred on his watch. Now, if it is true that he said that, that is probably the one thing in this entire story he said that is actually accurate, because Egyptian officials put out statements indicating that they had warned the Israeli government that Hamas was planning an attack, that they were planning something terrible, but that Netanyahu and his allies refused to listen, that they expressed indifference to that intelligence. And if you look at some of the polling in Israel right now, you'll notice that Benjamin Netanyahu is suffering from a low approval rating. Many Israelis appear to blame Netanyahu's government for the surprise attack. In a recent poll by Israel's Dialogue Center, a whopping 86% of Israelis surveyed characterized the assault as a failure of leadership by the Netanyahu government.
Thank you. So is he right that Netanyahu did not react? Forget the reaction, that he did not act in time. He's too busy worrying about his own corruption and worrying about destroying Israel's democracy and court system, et cetera, that he didn't bother doing intelligence. He didn't bother. And then his people got killed. He's right about it. By the way, thank you, Israeli citizens, for not only being honest, but smart. Like, look, I love the American people. I know that we had a rage-filled, emotion-filled reaction to 9/11, which is very understandable. But I don't know why we did hero worship of the clowns that let it happen. So Rudy Giuliani puts the terrorism response center in the one place that terrorists had hit before, World Trade Center. They had hit it in '93. The idiot put it back in there because the firemen couldn't communicate with one another effectively. They walked into a collapsing building. So many more people died. Bush got a memo that said they're determined to attack inside the United States. He's too busy on a month-long vacation on his ranch, and he didn't do anything. And what happened? What did America do? We shot both of them up to like 90% approval rating. Whereas now the Israeli people are like, no, that moron in charge totally dropped the bag, dropped the ball, and didn't pay attention and got us killed. Correct, that is correct. Thank you, Israeli citizens. Okay, so that's the only thing that Donald Trump is slightly right about, and we're always fair, okay? Now, let's talk about the things he's wrong about. Netanyahu should be impeached. There's no impeachment in Israel. So you're the former president of the United States. You were in charge of our foreign policy. Have you ever looked up anything, a single fact in your life? Do you know anything about politics? Do you know anything about government? Do you know anything about anything? Not a single thought in his head. And he doesn't think like, hey, I wonder if a prime minister could be impeached. I'd wonder, right? Wouldn't you wonder like, hey, that's a different system than ours. Do they have impeachment? No, nope. No, they should impeach him. They should impeach him. Okay, so look guys, what do you want me to tell you, MAGA? What do you want me to tell you? The guy did a dementia test and thought it was an IQ test. Really? Really? You're not sure if he's bright? One of the dumbest guys in the world. Okay, have at it. Enjoy him. So, all right.
All right, we got to take a break. Let's take a break. When we come back, we've got some big updates on Bob Menendez, the senator who is being accused of a terrible corruption scheme. He's facing additional charges. That and more coming up.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk, Anna, and Randy Cotto. Randy, thanks for signing up. We appreciate you. Anna.
Well, we have one more story having to do with the war in Israel and Gaza, but this has more to do with the disinformation that's been spreading. European Union officials are threatening to ban X, formerly known as Twitter, if Elon Musk fails to do something about what they consider disinformation about the Israel-Gaza war. In a statement to Insider, member of European Parliament, Stephanie Jan Corin, made this following statement. These are not empty threats. The EU commissioner gave Musk a deadline of 7 p.m. Central European time on Wednesday, that was yesterday, to comply with European Union regulations. And he has responded. Now, should Musk fail to do something about what they deem disinformation, the social media platform could be sanctioned and even banned, she said. She also argued that Elon Musk must understand that with his platform having more than 350 million users comes higher responsibilities. There cannot be any illegal content or disinformation circulating within Europe anymore. In addition, in a letter signed by Thierry Breton, the European Commissioner for the Internal Market, the EU said on Tuesday that the Commission had indications the platform was being used to disseminate illegal content and disinformation in the EU over Hamas's attacks against Israel. Now, I do want to get to Elon Musk's response to it in just a moment, but I have to say it is incredibly difficult to moderate disinformation on social media platforms. Who is the arbiter of that disinformation? Who makes the decisions? Twitter has community notes, which I think, have been helpful. I will admit that. I have noticed that, some of the claims that were inaccurate have been corrected. However, some of those claims get repeated without community notes included, and that's a problem. Elon Musk responded by saying, our policy is that everything is open source and transparent, an approach that I know the EU supports. Please list the violations you allude to on X so that the public can see them. Merci beaucoup. And he responded, Breton's responded to Musk by saying that the billionaire was well aware of warnings from users and authorities about fake content and glorification of violence. Now, Hamas has been banned from using the platform. However, there are individuals who might not be part of Hamas, but they are using videos that are put out by this group on the social media platform, and they are not that content is not being taken down. So that's part of the complaint here. Some media organizations also did their own review of what's been transpiring in regard to the messaging and the content on the war in Israel and Palestine. Over the weekend, X flagged several posts as misleading or false, including a video purportedly showing Israeli airstrikes against Hamas in Gaza. Thousands of users saw the post, and the most widely shared posts were flagged as misleading by the platform. Still, dozens of posts with the same video and caption were not flagged by X's system, according to CNBC's review. And look, there has been a lot of misinformation and disinformation shared on the platform. I think we've all kind of come across it. And just as a warning to you all, it's a warning that I take seriously myself. You can't just believe everything you see on any social media platform. You have to find a way to corroborate it, find an actual credible source to confirm it. And I know that's an incredibly difficult thing to do, but if you're unable to do that, I think it's safer to avoid taking those posts as truth.
Yeah, so Elon Musk sometimes does things that are just so silly. Oh, why don't you show us the videos, huh? Well, because they just told you that they're overly violent and fake. So why would the people who want you to take those videos down take them and then show them? You think they're children? That they're gonna fall for that ha-ha trick? That's absurd. Okay, so now look, when it comes to Twitter, I can't call it X, it's so silly. Anyway, is it difficult to monitor all of the fake videos on an enormous platform like that? Yes, it is, no question. We consider doing a platform, and one day we will at TYT. And I know the mechanics of running one because of that, and it is very difficult, okay? Now, having said that, here's where size matters. So these rules do not apply in Europe unless you have 45 million daily users. That is a giant number. Now, Twitter has 350 million, so they're way larger than even where the regulations would apply. That is when you hire a lot of people, because you're making a lot of money, to do that difficult task of moderating. But Elon fired all the moderators, or a lot of the moderators, and he fired like 3/4 of his staff. That's why the platform is overrun with fake videos, gory videos. By the way, by all accounts, I haven't seen it. I'm not saying that just to say, oh, not me. I'm not looking for it. Anyways, people say that Twitter is totally overrun with porn, right? So that's not supposed to be the case either. But that's what happens when you fire 3/4 of your employees. So he's got to figure this thing out. You're either gonna have a platform that's moderated, or you're not gonna have a platform in Europe and in a lot of other places. Look, America is totally lawless. You can buy the American government anytime you want, and you can pass any laws. You can be completely unregulated. But the rest of the developed world has laws and rules and regulations you have to abide by.
That's true. The other thing that makes this a far more complicated story, though, is we're talking about a global social media platform. And so the idea that the anti-free speech regulations that may exist in one country impacting what we see here in the United States is a little concerning.
Well, no, and so that's difficult for sure, because now you got to comply with 200 different sets of laws. But remember, these things don't apply to you unless you're already relatively gigantic, okay? And now if they apply to things that are not gigantic, then I disagree with them. Because that kind of overregulation kills off small businesses and leads to monopolies for businesses that are already large. So it's a balancing act. You have to be, you have to use good judgment here. But for the giant businesses, no, they all have a choice to make. So when, for example, if Iran says, okay, if you have any kind of freedom on X or Twitter or whatever, or you don't do Iranian propaganda, I'm not gonna allow you in Iran. You guys just gotta say, okay, then you're not allowing me in Iran, and I'm moving.
And
right?
Musk did bend to the will of the Chinese government.
So
for business reasons.
100%. So look at the decision that Elon Musk is making, and this is just a fact. He's willing to say to the Chinese, which is not a democracy in any way, shape, or form, run by now essentially one guy. You can call it a politburo, you can call it a dictatorship, you can call it whatever you like, okay? But he says to them, well, your market is large enough, so I'll do whatever your government tells me to do. Oh, Europe, you're not quite as large and you believe in freedom and democracy, so I'm not going to listen to you. Okay, well, now, look, Europe ain't nothing to mess with. When they say there's a regulation, it's not like America where you could just bribe all the government officials, okay? They'll apply that regulation and they'll cut off Twitter, and then we'll see what happens then.
Well, let's get back to the United States and the dysfunctional nature of our Congress, because of course we've got lots of clowns in the clown car, and Senator Bob Menendez happens to be one of them. Big update on that story. Let's do it. Democratic Senator Bob Menendez has been charged by federal prosecutors for acting as a foreign agent of Egypt. Now, news of his alleged corruption scandal broke 2 weeks ago, and he has resisted calls to resign, even though dozens of members from his own party have called on him to do so. However, let's get to the superseding indictment here. The superseding indictment filed in Manhattan federal court accuses Menendez of violating the Foreign Agents Registration Act, which requires people to register with the United States government if they are acting as an agent of a foreign principal. As a member of Congress, Menendez was prohibited from even being an agent of a foreign government, even if he did register as one. You know, as a lawmaker, you're not supposed to be in cahoots with foreign leaders or foreign business people. The indictment says the conspiracy occurred from January of 2018 through June of 2022. It alleges that in May of 2019, Menendez, his wife, and a business associate named Wael Hana met an Egyptian intelligence official in Menendez's Senate office in Washington, D.C. During that meeting, they allegedly discussed a US citizen who was seriously injured in a 2015 airstrike by the Egyptian military using a US-made Apache helicopter, the indictment says. Some members of Congress objected to awarding certain military aid to Egypt over that episode, and the perception that the Egyptian government was not willing to fairly compensate the injured American, according to the indictment. Now, here's where Bob Menendez comes in. Apparently, shortly after that meeting he had in Washington, the Egyptian official texted Hana that if Menendez helped resolve the matter, he will sit very comfortably. Hana, the indictment said, replied, "Orders, consider it done." And remember, Menendez's home was raided. During that raid, investigators found bars of gold. They found a ton of cash, lots of questionable potential evidence that could help the prosecutors in this indictment. I mean, he's so incredibly corrupt, and this is a separate corruption investigation. It's separate from the one he faced back in 2015. So he got caught with his hand in the cookie jar before. He got super lucky in that there was a hung jury and prosecutors dropped the charges. Let's see what happens this time around.
So I want to read you one more thing from The Guardian before I light into Menendez. The indictment said that while Menendez was chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, he took several steps to secretly aid Egyptian officials. They included ghostwriting a letter to fellow senators encouraging them to lift a hold on $300 million in aid. He was also accused of passing along information about employees at the US Embassy in Egypt. That is disastrous. And transmitting non-public information to Egyptian officials about military aid. Yeah, so in other words, he got the gold, he got the cash, and then he did what he was asked to do for Egypt.
How is this not treason?
Look.
Let's just keep it real. How is this not treason?
So look, when there's there's discussions, allegations, rumors, whatever you want to call it, about Jared Kushner giving over our allies within Saudi Arabia, and then MBS maybe Mohammed bin Salman maybe killing them, and he's certainly imprisoning them, etc. I don't know that that's true, and there should definitely be an investigation of it. And then Jared Kushner got $2 billion from Mohammed bin Salman right after the elections. Someone should definitely look into that. And so that is a different level because people got killed. But this is right below that. So nobody got killed here, but he's telling them who works at our embassy in Egypt, are you insane? So whether you call, I don't know that the reason I gave that example of Kushner is that I don't know that it rises to the level of treason based on those kind of metrics, right? It was American national security betrayed, etc. But it's a good question. It's a fair question, right? And definitely a foreign agent. Now, look, they had to prove all this in court, but there is no deep state. That's a right-wing like conspiracy theory. And the deep state isn't like, okay, let's get Trump because we're all Democrats, but let's randomly pick on that one Democrat. No, he did it. Let's put it this way. He's very, very likely did it, okay? So now, what should happen to Menendez? Open and shut, where's the conversation? Should drive him the hell out of the Congress. Maybe, metaphorically, tar and feather. I mean, they should get together in the Senate, and both Republicans and Democrats should chant shame, shame, shame until Bozo the clown leaves the goddamn building, okay? He's going, no, I'm not leaving, so what? You know why? Because he's power hungry. He knows if he steps down, he has no power base left, and then he's gonna have to deal with the Justice Department, and he's probably gonna go to jail. So he's desperately clinging on to power. So you have to force him out of power. So there is one hero in this story, and it's John Fetterman. So Fetterman is a colleague of his. In the past, every Democrat's like, oh no, our colleagues are the most beloved, important things in the world, way more important than our voters, right? And Fetterman, we told you, populist, progressive, he's back. So he's like, no, he should definitely leave, and we should drive him out. He's like, where's the question? This is not even a close question. Drive him the hell out. He doesn't belong in the Senate. Thank you, Fetterman. For at least one senator, I'm Bernie too, but Fetterman's stronger and louder on this, saying, get the hell out of here, you corrupt pig. So this is what makes the American government a joke. When Republicans and Democrats do over the top corruption, ridiculous, insane corruption, but colleagues, we hate your colleagues. When is it gonna get through your thick head? That's why we don't like the establishment, because you defend this obviously corrupt guy. He got caught before too. They all knew he was a corrupt piece of crap. You think Schumer didn't know? You think the other Democrats didn't know? But colleague, their little club is so much more important than their voters or the rest of us. Drive him the hell out. Obvious.
All right, that does it for our first hour. When we come back, we have some updates on Fulton County, Georgia prosecutor Fani Willis's trial against Donald Trump and his co-conspirators. She is accusing one of Trump's allies of interfering with the prosecution and abusing his power. We'll tell you who she's talking about and more when we come back.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk, and I'll see you soon.